Hi there, this is Anna from Anna Aspnes Designs. Welcome back to a brand new tutorial using the Rudeneja ArtPlay Collection and Artsy Stains number 5 from the current brush set bundle that are available in the Anna Aspnes Designs store at Scraps. I am working in Photoshop CC, however you can follow along in any version of Photoshop or Photoshop Elements. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this layout and create a new layout by going to File, New, and I am going to create a 12 by 12 inch new file at 300 ppi and click Create, and you can see now that we have this layout in our workspace with the one behind it. You may have to continually minimize that in order to hide it from view. And I'm going to navigate to our DigitalART Supplies, and you can see on my screen that I have ArtPlay Palette Rudeneja, which is going to create the majority of our layout. We'll probably use the text boxes from the Artsy Layered template, and then we have ArtsyEdge Frames that I want to look at in detail. The Artsy Stains number 5 from last week's brush set bundle collection, and then also the Change Word Art and MultiMedia branches, both of which I'm going to use to create our page. So the first part of this tutorial is to show you how to create your own custom artsy background. So to do this, I'm going to navigate to Part A of the ArtPlay palette and select the Papery folder. And within this folder you're going to find, of course, the 4 artsy papers that I have designed for you, and then 4 solid papers. We're going to use this teal one, as this is my favorite paper in this particular collection, and I'm going to drag it from its location and drop it directly onto the new layout. And then with the move tool selected, you're going to make sure that you place that layout squarely on your new canvas, and it should fit perfectly if you have created your layout at 12 by 12 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and click place, and then I am going to navigate back to our ArtPlay palette, and this time I'm going to head into ArtPlay Palette Part B, the transfers and overlays, and I want to select a variety of the overlays included in this particular folder. Holding down the Command or the Control key on your keyboard, you are going to select different transfers to import into your workspace. So I'm going to go ahead and select the Silver Leaves Transfer 1 and Transfer 2, and then I am going to drag them directly into my workspace and then drop them onto my canvas, and it's going to place one, and then I am going to have to click on that check mark to place the other transfers. Note that if you're working in Adobe Photoshop Elements, that check mark is going to appear on the bounding box. You'll also notice on my screen that I haven't yet opened my Layers panel, so I need to do that. I'm going to go to Window and ensure I have that Layers option checked, and that will open up our Layers panel. You can see that we have our background layer from our new layout, our paper layer, and the 3 transfer and overlay layers. And my goal here is to create an artsy paper using the top edge of the canvas as a guide to the placement of my transfers. So I'm simply going to just line these transfers up, reorder them by dragging them up and down the Layers panel in order to change the layering, and you can see that that one lines up quite perfectly with that underlying transfer, and then I'm going to bring that Silver Leaves transfer up to the top and place it here. So notice how I am aligning curves and lines within the transfers with one another to create a seamless transition. If you're interested in learning more about creating your own artsy canvases, you can take the Artsy Canvas class, which is part of the ArtPlay Unedited number 3 live event. The replay is available in the Anna Aspnes Designs store, at the AnnaAspnesDesigns.com website, and I'll provide a link to that below this video. So you can see now that we have created quite a nice foundation in order to place our photos. And so I am going to go to our Digital Art Supplies. This time I'm going to navigate to our ArtsyEdge Frames, and you can see that there are a number of different folders, and I've basically created these to group the layers together. If I click on this last one, you can see that we have the PSD file, and then I have also provided the layers that are included in that PSD file as separate layers for use in programs other than Photoshop and Photoshop Elements. So there is a drop shadow layer, there is a mask layer to which you'll clip your photo, and then there is the ArtsyEdge layer. I'm going to use two of these frames in my layout, and I'm going to use number one, and I'll go ahead and use the PSD file just to make it more simple. So I'm going to drag that into my workspace, and this time I want to make sure I place it in my workspace and not on my canvas. If I place it onto the canvas, it's going to import into one single layer, and of course we want to maintain these three different layers so that we can work with them individually and customize our frame. So I'm going to hold down the Shift button on my keyboard, and I'm going to select all those layers, and then with the Move tool selected from the Tools panel, I'm going to drag that ArtsyEdge frame on top of my foundation. And because I had that last layer in my Layers panel selected, those layers are going to be deposited on top of that layer. And I'm just going to nudge it in position. And I'm also going to rotate it slightly by hovering my cursor just outside the corner of the bounding box to yield these arced double-ended arrows, and then I'm going to rotate it so that the line of the frame aligns with this stain in the transfer in the background here. And then I'm going to close out the original, and we'll go back to our frame layers, and then this time I'm going to select the fourth frame and drag that one into our workspace and repeat that same action. So I'm going to select those layers and then move them onto my layout, and again rotate it slightly. I find that it gives it just a little bit of visual interest. So we can either have these frames overlapping, or we can create a little bit of space between them. Incidentally, if you wanted to use the 3 PNG layers that come with each of the PSD files, you'd simply layer them up with the drop shadow being the bottommost layer, the photo mask being the middle layer, and the ArtsyEdge being on top. You'd want to align them so that they are flush on top of one another, and then you would want to go ahead and rotate them. From here we're going to access some photos, and I have already pre-selected mine, a baby photo and a heritage photo. This is a scan of my grandmother's scrapbook, and so I'm just going to bring those into my workspace. Last week was a very strange day. On Halloween, my cousin's daughter was born, and we also lost my great aunt Renee. So I wanted to create a page that documents that small little crazy event in this universe that we live. So I'm opening those images into my workspace. I'm going to select the Move tool from the Tools panel, ensure that I have the Auto Select option checked. That's going to appear at the bottom of the screen if you're working in Photoshop Elements, and then I'm going to click on the layer to which I want to add my first image. And you'll notice when I do that, it selects that corresponding layer in the Layers panel. And then I'm going to select the photo that I want to add to that layer. So I'm going to drag this image and place it over the mask, and you can see that this is a really large scan, so I am going to have to resize it by holding down the Shift button on my keyboard, clicking on the corner point to get the diagonal double-ended arrow. Again, if you're working in Adobe Photoshop Elements, you're going to want to make sure that you have that constrained proportions box checked instead of using the Shift key. So I'm simply going to place this photo over the mask area, accept the transformation, and then go to Layer, Create Clipping Mask. And now that photo will conform to that underlying mask layer. And you can see that I have resized it so that it's just slightly too small. So I'm going to increase the size of that photo so that we don't see any of that white edge, just like that. And then I'm also going to just give it a little bit of a pop by opening the levels and increasing the highlights, the midtones, and the shadows. You can see how that makes it slightly lilac in effect. And so I'm also going to go to Image Adjustments. So we went to Image Adjustments and Levels, and then just a bit further down we have the Hue and Saturation. If you're working in Adobe Photoshop Elements, it's going to be Enhance, Adjust Lighting Levels, or Enhance, Adjust Color, and then Hue and Saturation. And then we can tweak the hue just slightly and take that lilac color to more of a teal color to match the colors in our color palette. So I'm going to click OK when I'm happy with that. Go back to the original, and then let's repeat that process with the baby photo. So I'm going to click on the layer in the layout that I want to apply our photo to. That is going to auto select the corresponding layer in the layers panel, and then I'm going to move that photo onto our mask layer. And again, I'm going to have to resize it by making it slightly larger so that it covers the area of the photo mask. And then you can go to Layer, Create Clipping Mask, and then you can move that photo around to get the best fit for your image. I want to try and remove this piece of equipment in the top right hand corner here, so I'm going to rotate and enlarge slightly. Now we can start exploring possibilities for manipulating the ArtsyEdge frame layer. So I'm going to go to View and Zoom in, just so that we can get a better view of these different frames. I'm going to start with the vintage photo first, so we can entertain the idea of recoloring that edge. You can keep it black, you can change the opacity, of course. Need to make sure I have the right layer selected. So you can change the opacity, of course, if you wanted to, but you can also change the color. And to do this, you're going to go to Edit, Fill. Ensure that you have that Preserve Transparency box checked, and then you're going to click on the Contents box, access the color, which is going to open up the color picker, and then you can randomly select a color or you can sample from your layout. So I'm going to go ahead and check on this teal and click OK, and then click OK, and now you can see that we have recolored that edge to teal. You can also apply a blending mode to the layers. So go up to the top of your layers panel and access the box that is denoted by this normal label, and this is going to activate a drop-down menu. And from here you can access different blending modes. So this one's Multiply. You could go with Color Burn, which I quite like, and then you could also go with Linear Burn. So lots of different options here. I think I like the Color Burn one. And then once you have a blending mode you like, you can slightly adjust the color by going up to Image Adjustment Levels and increasing the contrast or the lightness of that color to yield different results. And then you can also change the look of this ArtsyEdge or intensify its color by duplicating the layer. So select the appropriate layer, drag it down to the new layer icon if you're working in Photoshop, or up to the new layer icon if you're working in Adobe Photoshop Elements, and that is going to duplicate the layer so that you have two ArtsyEdge layers. You can see the difference when I turn on and off the visibility, and then you can refine that intensity by adjusting the opacity lever to preference. So a few different options here for using that particular ArtsyEdge layer. I am also going to change the color of the ArtsyEdge of our other photo. This time I'm going to go with pink. So let's go to Edit, Fill, and then access a pink. I'm going to sample from my layout again, click OK, ensure that Preserve Transparency box is checked, and then click OK. and then go back and apply a color burn blending mode. And again, you can duplicate if you want to. You can also slightly desaturate that color by going to Image, Adjustments, Hue and Saturation, or Enhance, Adjust Color, Hue and Saturation if you're working in Adobe Photoshop Elements, and just bringing down that saturation lever slightly. So you can see here we've got quite a nice effect happening just from using those ArtsyEdge frames. I'm just going to lighten up this image by going to Image Adjustment Levels, increasing the highlights, increasing the shadows, and then bringing down those midtones ever so slightly. The last thing you can do with these ArtsyEdge frames is to change the drop shadow layer style. So if I go ahead and click on that drop shadow, with the auto select option checked, it's going to take me to the corresponding layer in the layers panel. And here you have the option to change the color by using that fill again. So this time we want to have maybe a darker teal and click OK. You can change the fill amount by increasing that. You can see how you can make that shadow darker, and then you can also apply a blending mode such as color burn or linear burn, for example. If you apply a blending mode, could be very well that you need to bring that fill or the opacity amount down. So just a few different ways you can play with those drop shadows. So moving on to the embellishment of our page, I'm going to zoom out slightly so that you can see the page in its entirety, and I'm going to select the uppermost layer in the layers panel so that we can start bringing in elements. And so for this, I am going to go down to my DigitalART Supplies and access the multimedia branches. And again, you're going to see a number of different folders, each of which contains a different multimedia branch file. There's a preview, I've created a PSD file, and then I've also separated out those multiple layers into a few other PNG file layers so that you can layer them up yourself if you're working in a program other than Photoshop or Elements. Just for ease of use, I'm going to bring in the PSD file into our workspace and open it up into the background so that we retain all of our layers. And then I am going to select the top layer, hold down the Shift button on my keyboard, and then click on the last layer. And then with the Move tool selected, I'm just going to uncheck the Auto Select for the time being, and then bring that element onto my canvas. And I'm bringing this and placing it on the left hand side so that it brings the eye from one edge of the canvas to the other. But I'm also feeling like there's a lot going on here and we don't necessarily need to use all of the different layers. So I'm going to recheck that auto select, and I'm going to remove some of the layers by clicking on the layer that I want to remove, which is going to take me to that corresponding layer in the layers panel and turn off the visibility of those layers. I'm going to do the same thing with this glow here, and then perhaps move this pink glow down behind this small flower element. So you can see how we've simplified that slightly just by removing some of those layers. And if you're working in Adobe Photoshop, you can actually select all of these layers of that particular element and go to Layer, Group Layers, and that's going to allow you to group those layers together just so that they take up less space in your layers panel. And then I'm going to go back to our multimedia branches, and I'm going to bring in the second file that's available to us, and again bring that into our workspace and select all of those layers and then bring them onto our layout. And I want to place those between the two photos here. You're going to have to position them so that they don't cover any of the imagery that is included in the frames. Again, I want to turn off some of these layers. I'm going to turn off these glows. I don't think we need too many glows. I'm also going to resize some of those layers, so I'm going to access the string layer here that is acting as a branch, and I'm going to make that just slightly smaller just so that it fits my page a little bit better. And then I'm also going to select that Urban Threads, uncheck the auto select box so I don't accidentally select a different layer in my layout, and then just move this down. I'm just going to make a slight adjustment to that. And you can go ahead and you can keep the splatters or turn them off. I think I may just move those down beneath the frame layers just so that they're not distracting our photo, but yet we still have the visibility of that splatter coming out from beneath the frame. So building quite a nice composite here. That's how I am going to embellish. We're going to add a title, and I think a great place for a title would be in this position here. So again, I'm going to select the uppermost layer in our layers panel, go to our word art folder, which is the change word art, and I really liked the just one life. I thought that that was quite perfect. So I'm going to select those two layers, and then I also have the different word transfers, and I've actually started including the word in the word transfer just to make it a little bit easier for you to identify which elements you want to bring into your workspace. I'm going to go with this reticulation, which is kind of a network, kind of relates to family. Holding down the Control or the Command button on your keyboard, you can select any of these files randomly by just clicking on them. You can see that, and then bring them into your workspace. I'm going to bring them directly onto my canvas. I want to make sure I have the right layer. Let's bring it onto this one, so you can see it's going to place like that, and then we can select those layers and drag them over. I'm going to go ahead and close this guy out. Actually, I'll just minimize him for now because I think I'll just reuse the journaling boxes just so you can see how I will place those. So with our words placed on the layout, you can see that they are actually on top of our photo, and because of the shadow, that's not very realistic to have a flat element on top of one that has a shadow. So I'm going to drag these down so that they reside beneath those frame layers, and then we obviously need to reorder some of these layers. I want the Artsy transfer layer to be in the background here, and then we want the just one life to be on top of the other one. So I'm going to reselect that auto select button so that I have a little bit more flexibility with being able to move these files around. I'm going to resize that life so that it fits just a little bit better in this space, and then we can move this up slightly. So essentially what you're trying to do is you're trying to move these elements together just like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. Might just bring this one on top just so it looks like it's adhering down the top edge of this frame. So I'm going to drag that up and then apply a drop shadow layer style by going to layer, layer style, and then drop shadow. And I'm going to add an angle of 120, a distance of 5, and a size of 5, and click OK. So now you can see we've got just a little bit of realistic dimension on there. Bring that down just a little bit. So there's our title. I'm going to complete our layout by adding some artsy stains into the background. This is going to add a little bit of contrast, which is going to bring in some of these darker teals into our image. So I am going to go down and select the background paper at the bottom of the layers panel and create a new layer. You want to make sure that you have a light gray selected for this. You could also try a color as well if you wanted to, but I tend to prefer various tones of gray. Click OK, ensure that you have the paintbrush tool selected, and then you're going to go up to your brushes, and you can see that I have loaded the Artsy Stains number 5 into my brushes panel. You'll also notice with the new version of Photoshop CC that these brushes are now contained within groups, which is quite nice when you're looking through your brushes to know which brushes belong to which group. And you can also change the size, the preview size of those brushes by moving this lever along the bottom of the panel. So I'm going to select this brush here, and then I want to incorporate this transfer a little bit better with the background layer. So I'm going to click on the background and go ahead and apply a color burn blending mode, and you can see how that quite nicely adds some visual interest. And you can repeat that with the same brush on the other side of the page. And then maybe we go ahead and select a different brush, and we can add maybe a brush down at the bottom here like that. So just add some simple stains, creates a visual triangle, and allows the eye to continue across the layout. And then finally we want to add our journaling. You can do this by bringing in the text box from the Artsy template. In this case, that's what I did, is I used the text box from the Artsy template. I selected the type tool from the tools panel, and then I manipulated the size of that text box by dragging in the edges of the bounding box. And then I am just going to drag these onto our new layout. You can rotate them so that they align with the ArtsyEdge frames and bring them in there like that. So it's just a matter really of copy and pasting your text into those text boxes, or go ahead and just type in the font of your choice and then adjust the size as preferred simply by moving in those edges or even bringing them out as desired. So that completes our layout using the ArtPlay Collection Rudeneja. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial and learned a few things about using some of the products in this collection. The collection is on sale at 49% discount through the end of the week, and so go ahead and check that out at Anna Aspnes Designs store at Scraps. I will provide links to all products used in today's tutorial below this video. And if you have any questions about the techniques, then please don't hesitate to contact me. You can either post in the comments. I love to hear about what you're enjoying about these videos and what I can do better. You can also email me at anna@AnnaAspnesDesigns.com, and I'd be happy to help you with any problems that you're having. Hope you enjoyed this, and I will be back in this space again very soon. Take care and enjoy some art play.